Welcome everyone to another SDEC session. This session is going to be in our SEO topic category. And before I hand it off to Jacob, I'm just going to go through a couple housekeeping items before we dive in. Jacob, I'll let you move me forward. For those of you who are new to the SDEC, or if someone forwarded this to you and you're not a member, or if this is your first webinar, the SDEC is a free educational program for the masses. And the whole point is to kind of share knowledge, have people who are experts in the field, share a little information to help kind of improve your skills and your relevancy in the marketplace. We have 12 topic categories that are shown here. And when you originally sign up, you can pick whichever categories you want. If for any reason you've changed your mind and want to add a new category or remove a category, if you're getting too many webinar invites, then just email me at sdec@searchdiscovery.com and I can adjust the topic categories for your profile. The SDEC has been growing gangbusters. Recently, we crossed the 3,000 member mark, and we're in 80 countries and 867 cities as of now. So if you know folks who want to join, we definitely have some geographies that are underrepresented. So feel free to pass the news along, and they can go sign up at the Search Discovery website. One favor that I will ask, for some reason, we only have about 67% of the people who've joined the group who have joined the Slack group. The Slack group is really important because it's the only way that we can really share recordings of webinars. And we have over 30 webinars that are out sitting in the Slack group. But unfortunately, only 2/3 of you are able to access that. So if you are not in the SDEC Slack group, you don't have to join the SDEC again. All you have to do is email me at sdec@searchdiscovery.com. And as long as you're a member of the group, it just takes one click to join the Slack group. So if you're on this call and you're in the group, but you're not in the Slack, if you're in the SDEC, but you're not in the Slack group, just send me an email at sdec@searchdiscovery.com and I'll put that in the chat as well. That gives you access to everyone who's in the community. You could DM anybody, you could see all the recorded webinars, and we even have a job postings area where you can either post jobs if you're looking for people or look for jobs if you're looking. And then lastly, before I hand it off to Jacob, if you have questions during this webinar, if you're having technology problems or have a general question about the SDEC, just hit me up in the chat of the Zoom chat and I will answer any questions. But if you have questions related to today's topic for Jacob, please use the Q&A area of Zoom so that we can record all those. And if we don't get to them in today's session, we'll see if we can answer them in written format. And as always, this webinar will be recorded. So if you have to leave early or can't catch everything, it will be posted in the Slack group. So with that, I will hand it off to Jacob and let Jacob take it from here. Thanks so much, Jacob.
Excellent. So we have a pretty awesome session today for those people that are interested in search engine optimization. A lot of, I hope, pretty actionable tips and tactics to help you increase or drive more organic visibility. But before we jump into that, just a quick introduction of myself. So I'm Jacob Stoops. I'm a senior SEO manager here at Search Discovery and our SEO service lead. I have been in the SEO industry for about 15 years now. I've worked on a lot of different types of projects. And I'm seeing a response in the chat. Different types of projects ranging from enterprise, Fortune 100 to smaller websites. A little bit about me is that I also run an SEO podcast called the Page 2 Podcast. And if you are interested in listening to SEOs kind of talk shop with each other, I would love it if you would have a listen to my podcast. All right. So today's session. So SEO, in my opinion, is something that when people think about it, they think about it as a really long-term strategy, and it is, but it doesn't need to take a long time to work. And in this session, we will talk about things that I think are quick opportunities where you can assess your website or look at your processes to find areas that maybe you're overlooking where you can achieve some sort of organic growth or where you can mitigate a potential liability. And like with anything, a good SEO is nothing without our tool set. And some of the examples provided here will be utilizing different tools. Now, I think what I'm saying is you're definitely going to need some tools to do this. You will not need every single one of these tools. I will caveat that while many of these tools are free, many of them are also paid. And as an agency, we do leverage some of these tools using paid subscriptions. So definitely recommend all of the tools on this list. That being said, there are other tools, within the SEO space that are valuable as well. These are just the ones that we're bringing forward for the purpose of these 15 tactics. All right, so let's dive in. We're going to go for the next probably 20 or 30 minutes, just straight through 15 different ways that you can, like I said, uncover opportunities or potential liabilities. So one of my personal favorite opportunities, and you can see I'm a huge fan of Ahrefs, and Ahrefs does a really, really great job of allowing you to identify what are called content gaps. So a content gap is basically an area or a query where your competitors rank well and you don't. And Ahrefs does a really great job of allowing you to look at one or multiple competitors at once to identify queries where you're not ranking, but they are. And the best thing about this is a lot of times these are low-hanging fruit types of opportunities where it's not like you've got an existing piece of content that you've got to get over the hump. The barrier to entry is, hey, maybe you just need to go create this piece of content. And if you have a site with any authority, a lot of times just going and creating that content, especially if you're a powerful site, will allow you to begin to perform for those types of queries. And it is absolutely okay and absolutely good to look at your competitors quite often. And I think, especially if you're in a competitive industry, you should realize your competitors are doing search engine optimization as well. So there are going to be areas where they do worse than you, but there are also going to be areas where they do better. And part of your job as an SEO or as somebody that's trying to increase natural search traffic is to look for gaps and try to close them. The other thing I would mention is you probably have in mind people that you think are your competitors, and that might be true. It certainly might be true within the industry, but you should also look at people who are indirect competitors. And what I mean by that are people that compete with you in search results, but that aren't necessarily your direct business competition per se, but they do rank for things that you would want to rank for. So definitely look at those as well as you're looking at your content gaps. So keyword intent mismatches. This is another great opportunity, and this involves looking at your own rankings. So looking at different things that you're ranking for, comb through your rankings, look at the different queries and look for examples where the URL that you have ranking, and a lot of times this happens with rankings that are not performing that well. Look at the URL you have ranking, and in this example, you can see the query best cat litter. And in the example and in the actual SERP, you'll see that it's looking, Google is basically surfacing up comparisons of different types of cat litter. Well, the actual URL that Petco in this example, not our client, but just an example, has ranking is a category page, right? So there is an intent mismatch. So A suggestion here in this particular example would be for Petco to create a piece of content that directly addresses the intent of the query as perceived by Google, which would be to look at different types of cat litter and rate them from top to worst. And that might give them a better shot of ranking. So looking at the query and seeing, does your page match the intent that Google is rewarding for this particular query well? If the answer is no, you may want to create a new piece of content, or you may need to update your content to do a better job of matching the query intent, or else you will not have a good chance to rank. Content refreshes. The playthrough on this GIF is a little bit fast, but if you follow it, basically there are times where you have a piece of content, and over the course of time, it may rank well, but it may become to some degree stale. Or newer content, fresh content may over the course of time start to outrank it. So a good way to kind of stay up with the trends would be for any pieces of content that you have that were created a certain time range ago, to go back often and look to see if there's anything that you can do to update that piece of content, to bring it kind of up to date with current best practices, current trends within the space, so that the content is always staying fresh. And one tip that I would say here is if you have a post date, which Google often surfaces up within search results, you may want to also on your page also provide, in addition to that original post date, just like Credit Karma does, updated on whatever the date is. Now, if you're looking for how to quickly identify how to figure out which of your content might be stale, there are a couple of ways. Well, one, you can crawl your website, and kind of what I'm showing here is just pulling in the date field if you have a date timestamp, and using a custom extraction within Screaming Frog, which is a little bit technical, to go through and find the dates, and then you can sort by newest to oldest. Another potential option to look at dates if you don't have timestamps would be if you have timestamps in your URLs. That could be a good way to understand which content is a little bit dated. Or if you're not having either one of those options, you can always look at things like publish date in your content management system, or if your XML sitemap is kept up to date and the last modification date is kept up to date, you can look for pieces of content that have not been modified in a little while. Either way, the crux of the issue here is looking at opportunities to keep your content up to date so that your rankings don't start to trail off after a certain amount of time, so that you can hold whatever rankings that you have and keep your content fresh for users. And then one of the other opportunities that Ahrefs, SEMrush, any rank tracking tool that you prefer to utilize, you should be able to do something called looking for high volume underperformers. And basically what this is are queries that have a high amount of search volume where you're not performing well. So it's similar to content gaps in the sense that the volume is very high and you're looking for things that people are searching a lot, and you're not ranking well. And in the case of content gaps, you're not ranking at all. So these are basically like internal gaps. And it's not to say that you don't necessarily have content. It's to say that your content, for whatever reason, is underperforming. So by using some fancy filtering and looking at different potential SERP positions, ranging from, hey, it's on the cusp, it's on page 2, what do I need to do to kind of get it over that hump? Or, hey, we're ranking for a really high volume query, but we're on like page 40 or page 50. We may need to take more drastic action if we want to perform well for that query. But long story short, by finding and understanding where you're not performing well, you can start to look at your content and understand if you have to push it a little bit, okay, maybe I need to make a few tweaks to this piece of content to move it from 11 to 9 or 8 or 7. And that may require just a few small tweaks. If you have to push it farther, you may want to consider wholesale changes, but the real value is knowing where you have these opportunities. And if they're high volume underperformers, the chances are you're not getting a lot of traffic from them at the moment, but they've got huge potential if you can just figure out ways to move them up. So lost or declining rankings. So this falls into the category of liability. And a lot of times webmasters will lose traffic and not understand why that is. And a lot of times that relates to things that are happening on your website. And one way to kind of keep track of your lost rankings would be to regularly monitor it using a tool like Ahrefs, which is a little bit more of a one-off, or SEMrush, or using even some site monitoring tools like Content King or SEO Radar. But long story short, if you're not paying attention to areas or pages where you're losing traffic, this is a huge potential long-term risk to your overall traffic and your overall potential performance and growth opportunities. And by looking at this regularly, you can identify pages where maybe the SERP intent has changed. Maybe a content author went in and made a potential edit to that page. Maybe your team of webmasters or your developers made a change to the site that impacted certain pages. And basically by kind of keeping an eye on this, you can hopefully identify quickly when traffic or rank losses are occurring that are going to impact your kind of front end traffic or your bottom line. And the part of SEO that gets mentioned least often, because everybody thinks about it always with a growth mindset, is risk mitigation. So by keeping an eye on areas where you're declining or areas where you've lost rankings significantly, you can do a better job of risk mitigation and traffic protection, and you can address those issues as soon as they happen. Oh, SERP investigation. So this is also one of the most underrated aspects of SEO. So a lot of people, in my opinion, will be doing things like keyword research and will just focus on the queries that they want to rank for and the volume that those queries have. And then they will go create content around those queries, SEO optimized content. And then those pieces won't perform and people will be left wondering, why isn't my SEO content performing well? And one of the questions that I always like to ask is, well, did you go look at the search result? What types of content is ranking? And the reason that I like doing this is because it's basically the answer to the test, right? If you can reverse engineer by looking at the search result and understanding what Google is rewarding, because it's rewarding these sites for a reason, and figuring out what exactly are they doing and why are they being rewarded, you can then figure out, how can I reapply that to my own site to make it perform better? And then also understanding things like, okay, what types of special features are occurring within this search result? Do they tend to indicate that I need to do something with my content to address that special feature? Like, okay, what are the questions that people also ask? When I look at a Google auto suggest, what types of topics is it suggesting? If I don't have these in my content, do I need to think about adding them? And of course, once you kind of investigate the search result, and there are a lot of really great Chrome plugins and tools to help you understand what's going on. The ultimate task is, how can you take all of those data points and that information back and utilize it to not just improve your content, to do at minimum what everybody else is doing, but you have to supplant them. So you have to hit that baseline of doing what everybody else is doing, but figure out a way to do it better, because only one site can rank at the top for a query, and it's a zero-sum game. So you have to figure out how not only to do what they're doing, but do it better and provide more value. Somebody once told me, and this is a really great way to think of it, you have to be the best site URL in the world at answering that query. And that is definitely why you need to investigate the search results, investigate who, as you can see on the bottom right, who has recently entered the search results, what are they doing, and use that information to your advantage. Internal linking, seriously underrated tactic. So if you have any pages that you think have a lot of potential, or that you're using to target a specific query that you want to rank for, and you're looking at the search results and you're trying to investigate, all right, what is it going to take to rank? Okay, I've created the content, but every other page that's ranking well has a certain number of inbound links. Okay, oh man, I need to go build links. Well, building links externally is really difficult. So an alternative to doing that, because you don't often control links that come in from external sources, and creating great content that generates links is nice in theory, but really difficult in practice, would be to shift your focus to turn it around on things that you can control, which is your website. So you can control internal links to your website. And if your page that you want to rank doesn't have a lot of internal links, be it internal links from the nav, or internal links that are following kind of the 3-click rule, which is basically, if you have an important page, it should be no more than 3 clicks away from the homepage. You need to seriously consider that as an option. I've seen a lot of clients create SEO content that they don't want to surface up, but it is a critical component of ranking well. If you create a piece of content, you should want to link to it, and those internal links are absolutely going to help your rank. There are other things you can do outside of the navigation and following the 3-click rule. Look for orphan pages. You can use Screaming Frog to search for unlinked mentions, but even more importantly than any of that, probably working with your developers and working with your content writers to put matrices in place to ensure that if they're mentioning a certain topic, that they know which pages are valuable from a search perspective to link to. So going further upstream. And structured data. So this is certainly a pretty hot topic within the industry, and definitely something that is a good thing to consider, and that can get you more visibility by doing things that are somewhat behind the scenes that produce big results when it comes to the way that search engines can take this structured data and integrate it into search results, and allow your site to occur for or rank or appear for special features. So if you're not familiar with what structured data is, I'm not going to go into a super high level of detail, but it is basically markup that you can apply to your website to give search engines a little bit more granular information about your content. Now, if you go and look at schema.org's repository, it is massive. There are hundreds and hundreds of different types of structured data. And you can absolutely go to those links and mark up your website with all of that, and it's all good. That being said, if your focus is on generating organic visibility, which it probably is, I would recommend that you tend to focus on the types of structured data, and you can see them in this Google documentation, that Google rewards with what are called rich snippets, which are those kind of featured featured results and unique result types within search results. So if you have content that aligns to something that Google rewards with a featured snippet, I would highly recommend marking it up that way. Not only that, I would highly recommend testing it. And with the retirement of the structured data testing tool, there are some alternatives. So there's the rich result testing tool from Google, which is not my personal favorite because it doesn't account for all of the libraries. But there are some kind of independent sources that have, in lieu of the retirement of the structured data testing tool, built their own tools, which actually might be better. So schema.dev and a site called Classy Schema. If you want to check your structured data in bulk, highly recommend utilizing Sitebulb. They've incorporated a new feature in the last couple of months that allows you to check validation in bulk and Screaming Frog. Now, the big thing about structured data is the markup has to be technically specific and technically accurate. So if you implement structured data and you have validation errors, there's a high chance, more than a high chance, that Google will ignore it. And what that means for you is you're not going to get rich snippets, which isn't going to get you that increase in visibility and or clicks. And then Noindex and the robots tag. So these are kind of dirty words for SEOs and areas that can be kind of crushing if you get it wrong. That's not to say that you shouldn't use these areas. There are absolutely right ways to use Noindex and robots disallows, and some places that you should be using robots, Noindex rules and robots disallows. So basically, you have to understand which content on your website should not be indexed. And if you have content that is duplicative, that doesn't provide value to the users, or that shouldn't ever be seen by users, private content, that content should be no indexed. If you have areas of your site that you do not want crawled, that should be blocked via a robots file. Now, the tricky part of this is if you've got content that's already in the index, you can't get it out of the index by blocking it via the robots file. You actually have to open it up and put the no index tag in to give search engines a signal that a page shouldn't be no indexed. Long story short, this is potentially a huge liability. I've seen more than enough times sites where they accidentally either block the site via the robots file or add a no index to key pages or the entire site. So highly recommend here putting some sort of a monitoring or a system in place where you're regularly checking for this, and it can save you. Putting those systems in place can save you from losing a lot of traffic, and it's a risk mitigation tactic. Content King, SEO Radar are really great for this, but also I recommend regularly crawling your website. And I can tell you from experience that there have been more than probably 4 or 5 times where I've been able to catch a potential issue where a site was accidentally de-indexed quickly. And in the case of some companies, that has saved them millions of dollars. So we're beginning to get close to the end, and then I want to open it up for questions. So of course, site speed is definitely something that is increasing in importance, and it has been important for a very long time, and it's about to get even more important, especially if you've been paying attention to Google's announcements around Core Web Vitals. Long story short, there are easy ways to test your site speed. You can go to Google Page Speed Insights. You can go to Web Page Test. If you want to test it in bulk on your site, you can use tools like Screaming Frog and Sitebulb, so on and so forth. Your biggest problem is most likely your JavaScript and your CSS. So I would highly recommend looking at your first-party JavaScript, i.e. those resources that you're serving on your website, your third-party JavaScript to make sure that you're not serving payloads coming from third-party providers that are too big. I would prioritize pages, but focus on templates. And what I mean by that would be focusing on templates that can impact a lot of pages. A quick fix, and the quickest fix that you'll probably have would be optimizing your images. When sites have speed issues, it is related to three things: JavaScript, CSS, and images. Out of those three things, images are the quickest to fix. Oh, and JavaScript again. So JavaScript is not a bad thing, right? But it is a potential liability on the SEO side if you don't do it right. And Target here is a great example. So in this GIF, I'm using the quick JavaScript switcher, which is a Chrome plugin, to show which content is populated by JavaScript and which is not. So by turning off JavaScript, their entire page goes away. Now, if they're not handling that on the back end with some sort of a pre-rendering solution or server-side rendering or something, Google will understand the content on their page, because Google is really, really, really advanced with that. Even with that, though, there are delays with respect to how Google understands and renders, and then how that impacts rankings. Other search engines, not so good. And I will say, even Google, if you are moving to a JavaScript framework, which the statistics show that a lot of sites are moving this way, you just have to know the risks. And not only that, you really have to think about, are you doing the implementation in a way that's going to maintain SEO friendliness? And there are ways to do it. I don't want to say JavaScript is a dirty word, because it's not. You can perform well while using a JavaScript framework. I've done it myself. That being said, there are a lot of technical potential liabilities that can go wrong, and it is one of the more complex areas. So if your site is heavily predicated on JavaScript, you just kind of need to pay attention to your technical approach to implementing it to ensure that you're not creating liabilities. Or if you're moving to JavaScript, you need to understand what the liabilities are and how to get around them. And hopefully, eventually, search engines will catch up. Internal search results, again, they're definitely useful, but I've seen many, many instances where they compete with category pages. Target is a great example, where they have a lot of internal search results that are indexed, and they have category pages that match the same search results. So there's a lot of potential opportunities here for cannibalization, a lot of potential opportunities for rank bloat, having a lot of potential versions of search pages getting indexed that don't need to be indexed, or low quality searches getting indexed that don't need to be indexed. So I would recommend here looking at your internal search results and trying to figure out, is there a need to have them indexed? I would say if you are executing your search functionality, if there's a way when somebody searches for a specific thing to redirect them to a category page that you have, that's super ideal. I would also recommend monitoring in Google Analytics to understand what people are searching, and specifically looking for instances where you do not have a category page to match that search, which might be an indication, hey, you need to go create that category page. Otherwise, I would probably tend to lean towards no indexing a lot of your search results in the event that you have categories to cover those pages so that they don't compete with each other. And then I want to get through the last three and then open it up to questions. So faceted navigation, again, this is a super complex area of SEO, especially with e-commerce websites. I don't have enough time in the day to discuss this. I'd love to have maybe a separate session on it. Long story short, this is very similar to duplicate content, to search results getting indexed. You have to be really, really careful if you've got facets on your website with how you approach them, technically speaking, because there is the potential to really create a lot of duplicate content in the index and really blow up your crawl budget. If every potential combination of every facet on your page can build a new potential URL, you can just do the quick math. If you have X number of pages with X number of facets per page, that means that there's the potential for a lot of duplicate content. So basically what you have to do is really understand which facets drive search volume, and probably de-index or not index all of the rest. And typically what I revert to would be indexing one facet versions of URLs, sometimes two. And sometimes I'm even pretty restrictive on that so that you're hitting on things that people search for, but not creating a lot of duplicate content. And then last but not least, in terms of the examples, before we get to one process related thing. So one thing that I have seen when it comes to optimizing for alternative language and region websites is a lot of cannibalization. And there is a huge potential for cannibalization as you consider sites that have to be available in multiple languages, multiple regions, which means multiple versions of your website. And a lot of times what I've seen is Google perceiving the different versions as duplicates and not indexing the version that you would want in the search engine that you would want. For example, in this case, there are two French sites, and unfortunately in France, the French Canadian site was ranking and not the actual French website. And it's because Google was perceiving one as the duplicate and not indexing the other. And what I would say here is the problem in that case was not that they didn't have things like hreflang tags in place. It was because they didn't translate it. And translation is a huge area of opportunity and a huge area where a lot of sites that are doing non-English, non-United States SEO are missing the boat. They're creating extra versions of their pages that are designed to target other languages or other regions, and then just leaving them all in English, which is the problem. And then the other thing I would say is if you have the need to have a lot of versions of your websites for other regions and other languages, don't just create them for the sake of them, especially if you're not going to translate them. That can be frustrating for users and it can lead to a lot of cannibalization. And then last but not least, process. So the biggest opportunity that we all have outside of just tactics is improving the speed and the accuracy of our execution. That is the biggest reason that SEO takes a long time. It doesn't have to, but it often does because it's really difficult to prioritize execution. So how do we fix this? And I've provided a couple of really great resources, but you try to do your best to make it easy to understand, make it easy to implement, develop healthy relationships with your various stakeholders, build organizational evangelists, and people often forget this, but show them the results. Go back to the people that don't ever get access to see larger results, like developers who are very in the weeds or copywriters who are very in the weeds. Show them the benefits of their work, and they're going to be more likely to support and prioritize your objectives. All right, so that was a lot. I'm sure I'm getting pinged because I'm running short on time, but now is the time to open it up to questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jacob. We do have a bunch of questions, and I know there was a lot of information, everyone, but this will be recorded. So if you need to go back and check some stuff out, you can check out the recording in the Slack group. So we'll do kind of a power round, rapid fire here. So how do you get SEO keywords in Adobe Analytics or other analytics tools?
Honestly, that is I'm going to admit, I'm not as familiar with Adobe Analytics, so I don't know that I can answer that question.
I can actually cover that one. By default they track them, but the problem is that because of the privacy stuff, most of them come in as keyword unavailable. So it's almost like most analytics tools ignore a lot of the SEO. My understanding is you have to really use kind of the SEO tools that come along with Google and stuff. But yeah, really difficult to see detailed information about SEO in Adobe or even Google Analytics these days. Next question is, what's the rationale for why you would use internal links to boost rankings? I think I'm reading that correctly.
Yeah, nope, that's a good question. So if you really think about links, Google looks at them like votes for a website. And there are really two categories of links, right? There are links coming from outside sources, which can and are usually good votes of confidence. And there are the links that you can provide yourself. And especially if you have a piece of content on your website that is not well linked, showing Google that that piece of content is very important, i.e. giving it a vote by linking to it in prominent places, is a good indication that that piece of content is important. And not only that, if you have a powerful website and all of a sudden your powerful website with all of its authority starts linking to a page on your website that is important for and that you're using to target a query, that is a really good signal for them to use to say, hey, maybe this page is worth a better potential ranking. Now, I'm not saying that you can't or shouldn't focus on getting links from third-party sources, but that is a lot harder and a lot further outside of your kind of scope of control. So if you have trouble getting that, or if you don't think that you can get it in a very natural way, because external link building is very risky, an easy alternative to that is focusing on internal link building, often overlooked.
Okay, next question. Sometimes is it easier to include JSON code from tag managers tags to the website instead of modifying or customizing the CMS? Would this tactic have the same effect for rich snippet purposes?
Yes, so you can use you can use Tag Manager to implement structured data in JSON. And really, it all depends on your ability to access the tech stack. Usually, when I see structured data implemented through Tag Manager, it's because there are technical limitations that you can't get to, or you can't get it prioritized fast enough. My recommendation would be to avoid doing it that way, because it is a lot more tedious. If you can build it into the foundational functionality of the system to where it can be automated a little bit easier, I would certainly recommend that. And not only that, there's often the question, should I mark it up within JSON in the head or with actual markup within the body? And I would say JSON's the way to go 99% of the time, because that's a lot harder to break. Whereas if you mark it up in your actual body HTML and code, that's very easy to break. But yes, it should all work the same way with respect to triggering rich snippets, assuming that your markup is valid.
Okay, we've got time for one more question. Is it possible to do a content gap analysis without tools, only using Google Search Console? Or what audit topic can Google Search Console do?
Content gap analyses are often focused on your competitors. So unless you have access to their Search Console somehow, it would be difficult to do through Search Console. That being said, I think you can do more informal content gap analyses by looking at your competitors' websites, looking at where they're ranking in Google search for different types of queries, and just generally looking at what they're doing as a brand and understanding where areas where they're doing things that you're not, that you could potentially adopt. So the tools certainly help, and the process I'm suggesting would be a lot more manual and intuitive by nature. But if you don't have access to the tools, which I definitely know is a possibility, that is a potential way around it.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining another session. And Jacob, thank you so much for sharing all of your SEO wisdom.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, have a great day, everyone.